Okay, well, we're continuing on with the Peace Pilgrim. And let's see here. We're on, well, mine says page 120. We're let's see, one, two. We are 5 pages into The Way of Peace, chapter 8.
That's
And we're on
102.
pardon me?
I think it's 102, Swami. Is that what other
Oh,
people have?
okay, 102 in the printed books.
Yes.
Very good. All right, so we're on the chapter or the paragraph that starts, in order for the world to become peaceful. Yes, she says, in order for the world to become peaceful, people must become more peaceful. It's funny how we talk about the world being in peace, but something that the thing about that is we always limit our mind when we say the world to the human world. I remember when COVID hit, and everybody was in the big panic because we didn't know if this was going to kill everybody or what it was going to do to everybody. And I remember I was in Olima at the time. But, no, I wasn't in Olima.
You were here, Washington.
That's where it was. I was in Washington D.C. and I saw deer. I knew the story was about deer, and the place I usually see deer is Olima. So, but yes, no, it was in Washington D.C. and there was some deer in the back by the woods when I was standing out by the fountain, and I was contemplating this COVID and the world and all that. And I was just watching these deer. And I was like, look how strange this is. My world has changed, and I'm all nervous now about my health and about this, you know, this epidemic that's starting and coming and blah, blah, blah. And the deer, it was just another day for them. There was nothing wrong in their world. There was nothing to get alarmed about. There was nothing to be worried about. And I thought, wow, what an interesting perspective. Maybe I should join the deer world a little bit more often and think about their news, right? Think about what affects their world and start to learn what's important. That that we don't have to see the world as being in a particular condition just because the news mentions a particular condition. It's I that's why I'm really growing, especially in these days and times with just the stress of news and events. At first, I was just trying not to be a part of the news, and I thought, well, I don't really like that idea. So I've changed the idea. It's the same. It's the same practicality. I'm not really watching the news except for just keeping a kind of a brief scan going for any emergencies that I should know about. But I'm really trying to get my attitude for the condition of the world, not from a secondhand opinion, not from a secondhand news source, but to get it from the way I experience the world. The world is very peaceful. My world is very peaceful, right? I mean, all this stuff is happening in another sphere. It's not really happening in my sphere. And so while I should be aware of it, I shouldn't be in a panic about it. I shouldn't be all worked up about it. I should be in my steady self, my steady walk with God self, and live in the world as it is and not as I'm being told it is. Right. And so to get my information from my experience and from my place in the world, and to start living according to that and building according to that. So in order for the world to become peaceful, people must become more peaceful. Right. So if we take it from the perspective of the human world, we have a problem with peace, you know, but the world doesn't necessarily have a problem with peace. The world is perfect harmony, so I just think it's important to keep that perspective, that just because somebody says the condition of the world is this, we don't just all of a sudden say, oh, okay, that's the condition of the world. We look out our window, we talk to our neighbors, we talk to our friends. Hey, is the world like this? My world's not like this. Is your world like this? Right? And get a more accurate view of things so that we can get a healthier grasp on things. Among mature people, war would not be a problem. It would be impossible, indeed. In their immaturity, people want at the same time peace and the things which make war. However, people can mature just as children grow up. Yes, our institutions and our leaders reflect our immaturity, but as we mature, we will elect better leaders and will set up better institutions. It always comes back to the things so many of us wish to avoid, working to improve ourselves. This is something in retirement age. In retirement age, this is something that I really have understood. It's a great time in life to work on this, because I've seen quite a few people now retire. And the first batch of people that I watched retire, I have to say that I'm not judging them as people. I'm judging them as kind of just people who retire and what happens to people that retire. And the thing that I was interested in is that everybody who retired when they were retiring were talking about all the things they wanted to get done and all the projects they wanted to work on and all of the self-improvement that they were going to do. And, and many of them that involved a rather large spiritual component as well. And then I've watched them retire, and now I've seen 4 or 5 years of their retirement, and none of them have stayed, literally none of them stayed true to their statements, right? None of them stayed true. They didn't start the businesses they want to start. They didn't read the books they wanted to read. They didn't move into the monastery they wanted to move into. They didn't, all of these things, they just carried on basically the same way their life was going before their retirement. They just sort of kept it going, and they stayed busy with just stuff, not really having a plan, not really following an architecture plan at all. Just getting caught up as things came at them. And I think what she's talking about here, is this whole notion of working to improve ourselves, right? It comes down to that. We don't work to improve ourselves, to improve the condition of our minds, to improve our level of knowledge, to improve our level of self-discipline. And there's a pushback on that. We just kind of, especially in this day and age, I find myself constantly being tempted with entertainment, not accomplishing or working on anything of meaning, but the constant pull of the phone for a game, for a fun video from YouTube, from a little bunch of snippets from Reddit. And I'm thinking, wow, it seems like the idling push of, I guess, being right now, or being on the planet right now, is this constant lure toward a distraction, and how strong it is, and how our devices are not just created for it, but optimized for it and designed to pull us out of a space of independence from them into a neediness. Every ding, every bleep, every little, grabs your attention. You run and you pick the thing up. And I've even found that sometimes I'll pick it up. I'll get a text message and it'll ding, and I'll go and pick it up. And even before I check the text message that it dinged for, I get distracted. Even in the process of going to that message, I'll get distracted into another thing, on there. And it's just crazy these days. And so this constant pull toward entertainment, which is really distraction, is really damaging to a spiritual mind, really damaging to a spiritual mind. It pulls us out of that wholesome place within us, that stable place within us, right? And so I'm saying all of this to kind of be aware of that, and to set an agenda for yourself for self-improvement, for self-care, to dedicate yourself to becoming better, right? Just working on your life in a purposeful way with an idea, and that idea is your union with Mother. Yeah, that idea is to take this moment that you inhabit and to learn how to inhabit it properly, to inhabit it with harmony, to inhabit it with acceptance and with surrender. Because this moment that you have been experiencing for your whole life, the same moment, right? The quality of that moment is up to you. And when we live lives of distraction and just kind of follow one distraction after another, that moment, the quality of that moment, it seems like it comes from the moment rather than coming from us. And as long as we stay in that distracted state, we can literally waste years of time just being pulled into entertainment and distraction and not actually accomplishing or moving very much in any purposeful direction. And so she's saying, you know, when she starts off saying, for a peaceful world, more people have to be peaceful. Well, for a peaceful world, more people really have to make peace with themselves, right? Because we know that's where our inner peace comes from. And to make peace from ourselves, the problem is that we are not in harmony with ourselves. And that's why the pull of distraction is so strong, because we'd rather think about that than the things we would normally be thinking about. We'd rather be distracted from the things we need to do or could be doing like that. But if we start, being aware and start pulling ourselves into more of an awareness and start doing the things that we know we need to be doing and get the things done that we know we need to get done and to work on the things that we know that we need to work on. And if we get that kind of get some momentum going there, that's the way that we create a moment that we don't want to be distracted from. Because we keep things up to date, we do our things responsibly, we're working on our practice, we're putting our heart into the things that we're accomplishing, and we're offering them to the Lord. If you do that, if you live like that, distraction is not so interesting. Distraction feels like frenetic energy. It feels like the emptiness that it is when you are sitting in a place of intention. Let's put it that way, sitting in a space of intention where you're aware of your being and you're aware of where you're going and what you're doing. And you're aware of your position in your world, right? And you're moving forward. So it always comes back to the thing that so many of us wish to avoid, working to improve ourselves. The sanctuary of peace dwells within. Seek it out, and all things will be added to you. We're coming closer and closer to the time when enough of us will have found inner peace to affect our institutions for the better. And as soon as this happens, the institutions will, in turn, through example, affect for the better those who are still immature. So just that what we know, our peace dwells within, right? That which is going to make our life perfect is not anything outside of ourselves. What does that mean? It's not a job. It's not where you live. It's not the bike that you own. It's not the computer that you own. It's not the group of friends that you're hanging out with, right? Those, when we sit there and we get down into depression in our lives and think, oh, I got to go change my life. That's what we start thinking. Oh, I got to change my job. Oh, I've got to change my friends. Oh, I've got to change my hair color, right? Always reaching outside for the changes, thinking that, oh, that'll make it better, right? And for years, I believed that. You don't know the years I invested in trying to find the perfect computer setup. I was a techie guy in the world out there. And in the 90s, boy, I had the latest and greatest constantly. And I was always hoping that it was going to give me this sense of synergy, to get in there and really get this stuff done and develop some stuff. No, never did it. Never did it. I always had a computer that was at least 4 times as powerful as I needed. doing things that basically were for distraction, right? And so this is my expertise in sharing this with you. Be careful of that distracted mind. Be careful of falling out of harmony inside and not being present in it, but going ahead and living in that distraction. So we want to find that. We want to bring our minds back down to our moment and work with this moment, right? We don't have to work with whole lives. We don't have to work with all this other stuff. We work with this moment. This moment is the tool of the spiritual seeker. As a matter of fact, this moment is the only tool of the spiritual seeker, right? And so really spiritual life is not so much about an enlightenment that we imagine as a happening somewhere, sometime. Spiritual life is about inhabiting this moment fully and knowing how to live it true to your nature. That is what produces a fulfilling life, not a narrative of what you're accomplishing and how much money you're making or what you've accomplished in your studies or in your research or your whatever's. That's not how life gets better. That's not how life gets more fulfilling. Life gets more fulfilling by the simple process of inhabiting the moment and learning how to use your nature, your love, your wisdom through your existence to create a perfect moment that comes from inside out. Perfect moments don't come from outside in. And as long as we think that way, we'll be running after things in order to serve the body or the mind. But when we come to know that the only things I need to worry about are the internal conditions of my moment, right? The internal conditions of my being and what my nature is. And with that little bit of information, samadhi can be reached, right? We can know samadhi even. Peace will probably come to the world in the same way as it has come to our land. Out of the chaos of civil war, Indian wars, and the duels of hundreds of years ago has come order. Mechanisms have been set up to avoid physical violence, while psychological violence still endures. The smaller units, the states, have given up to the larger unit, the United States, the right to make war. Yes, I think the time will come when the smaller units, the nations, will give up to the larger unit, the United Nations, one single right, the right to make war. Right, so she's got a big dream going here. This is nice. I don't believe the nations would or should give up other rights. People have the most control over their affairs at a grassroots level. Anything that can be fairly and efficiently handled at a grassroots level should thus be handled and only delegated to a higher authority when necessary. The United Nations would have its job maintaining a peaceful situation in the world. As long as we remain immature, the UN would have a police force to deal with individual offenders against the peace of the world by removing them. I would hope for their rehabilitation. Also, it would have an unarmed peace force to deal with war prevention, while our nation can deal with problems like an inadequate food supply. The UN would have to deal with problems like a country striving for freedom, and freedom is now the desire of all human hearts. All right, you know, it's interesting that she talks about going in for our inward peace, but then even her solution is all externals. You know, she wants to give the UN the power to remove leaders, who want to go to war. Well, who can't see that somebody is going to rise up within that paradigm and abuse that power to remove leaders that don't agree with them or leaders that don't do what they say, right? So even in that, you see how tricky this Maya is. Even knowing that the answers lie within, even knowing that, we still are tempted, to go outside and fix the outside. No, we have to fix the outside, right? But that's not going to happen because everything outside is always neutral. It's neither good nor bad. It simply is, right? And we experience that in the world. It's like we know that if a volcano blows up and kills 100,000 people, we don't put it on trial. We don't go run around thinking, oh, what went wrong, right? We're like, oh, a volcano went off and that many people died. And that's the way life is, right? But if a person goes out and kills 100,000 people, then we're pretty much up in arms about it because that seems like a controllable situation. It seems like something we should be able to control, right? And so really that's our criteria. If we control it, then we can make it happen, right? That makes us karma machines. And so we've been trying that. We've been doing that as a society, as a culture, as a world for many, many, many eons, it seems. And so now she's giving us a hint. The answer lies within. Of course, she's giving us some external directions too, but we'll smile at that and take the message that your peace lies within, and your peace lies within your ability to accept this moment as it is and to find it perfect. That is the source of peace. And that is what everybody needs to do in order for there to be world peace. and that everything necessary for supporting that will occur if everybody is doing that in the moment, right? While our nation can deal with the problems like an inadequate food supply, the UN would have to deal with problems like a country striving for freedom. And freedom is now the desire of all human hearts. Freedom has been the desire of all human hearts forever. It's built into our very nature, right? Vivekananda telling us constantly, you're free. You're ever free, right? And we should bring that moment, bring that freedom into our moment. How do we do that? Well, by realizing this moment comes fresh. It doesn't bring anything with it. It presents the new world to me fresh each in the moment, constantly. And that moment is where all of my power is, the power of my karma, the power of changing my karma, the power of removing my karma, the power of adding to my karma. All exists in this moment right now. You know, my good tomorrow has nothing to do with tomorrow. It has everything to do with making a good now. If I make a good now, I'll have a good tomorrow. And if I live in that awareness and stay out of my distractions, you know, stay present, then life improves constantly, you know, going forward. I once said to a woman who believed in war and Christian values, on the one hand, you talk about Christian values, and on the other hand, you say, isn't force the only deterrent they respect? This has been our trouble down through the ages. We have given only lip service to Christian values and lived by the jungle law of tooth and claw. We have quoted, be not overcome of evil, overcome evil with good, and then attempted to overcome evil with more evil, thereby multiplying the evil. We worship God, but have no faith in the working of God's laws of love. The world awaits the living of the law of love, which will reach the divine within all beings and transform them. So this is what it is to be in touch with the moment. It is being in touch with the nature of love that's in the universe in the moment. You know, if when I'm reading the news, I forget all about that nature of mine. I forget all about my inner peace. That's there. It hasn't gone anywhere, but see, the news has taken my eyes off of it and placed it on things that are changing, things that are unreal, things that will not remain, right? But it's by us staying in the moment, staying sober in the moment, which, you know, has nothing to do with drinking or not drinking. It means not being distracted, not being entertained from the moment, but just being present in the moment. You know, that we find these things. Does this mean we don't worry about hunger? No, this means that we are present in the moment, and if dealing with hunger is necessary, it will occur. I will see the opportunity, I will see the need, and I can raise up in my moment to do it. If that isn't in my moment, then I do not need to define my moment that way, right? Mother has not placed that in my sphere of experience to serve or to deal with or to help with. She has other things for me to deal with and to help with and to serve with. And if I'm paying attention to the news and not paying attention to the world I inhabit, I won't be available to her. I won't hear her. I won't see her when she points out the important things in my now that she cares about, you know, that hearts care about. And so it's really moving our awareness again out of this media sphere, out of this internet, out of this cloud of, well, it's a great thing to call the cloud of unknowing, but just this cloud of ignorance that everybody's engaged in, right? That we're all happy panicking together over, complaining about together, becoming nervous and scary about it together. But really, what we're missing is the beauty of the moment that's here right now. Every one of you, where you're sitting right now, you look very peaceful. You look very comfortable. That's your moment. That's your reality. God is with you in this moment right now. All you have to do, and even now, I can feel the happiness as each one of you for a moment there had your mind placed back on that presence, right? And immediately it's there. That beautiful presence, which makes you strong, which makes you valuable, which gives you all of the tools that you need to live this moment excellently, perfectly even, right? It's just a matter of keeping the awareness on the presence, awareness on the beauty of the moment, on the potential of the moment, and to not drag in our distractions, not to drag in our failures, not to drag in our stories and narratives. Leave the moment clear as it is clear and accept the freedom that it gives you to do whatever you need to do whatever you're inspired to be in this moment purely and wholly, right? So the world awaits this living law of love, right? Awaits what? Awaits for us it's waiting for what? It's waiting for somebody to do something for us, right? That's really what we're waiting for. We're all waiting for someone to take care of the news. We're all waiting for someone to take care of that war, waiting for someone to take care of that country, take care of those people. Will somebody do something? You know, that's where we're sitting, spending our time. Why? Because we're being informed about things that we have no power in and we're disempowered. And so, of course, we have to think of others and depend on others. But that's how we give away our power, right? That's how we give away our determination. Again, I just reiterate, bring your world out of the internet, off of the internet, off of the evening news, off of the newspaper, off of whatever's going on Facebook or whatever people are on these days, and bring it into your moment that you inhabit, the place where you live and the place where you dwell, and find the love within yourself to produce peace in your moment, right? By living it with awareness and fullness of presence, to create a beautiful moment out of what is available, out of what is given to you, right? The world awaits the living of the law of love, which will reach the divine within all human beings and transform them. And where will it do that? It will do that in the now. Right now is where God's love enters into you. Right now is where God's love inspires you and gives you the power to do the things of the divine, to work in the divine. She says, the pastor of a large Canadian church who had recently returned from a visit to the Orient told me that the Buddhists are sending 2,000 missionaries to convert the Christians to the way of nonviolence, which was probably true and probably would be a great idea, right? Yeah, it's a mystery to me how violence has become so dear and so close to the Christian world, and the religious world in general, right? Because commitments and feelings run deep, attachments run deep in religion, right? It gets us to attach to things quite deeply, which is an irony because it's supposed to give us the freedom from things, the freedom from ideas, right? And place our heart on being, on loving, and on wisdom. During World War II, an American Sunday school teacher who was in the Pacific had captured a Japanese soldier. In marching the soldier to camp, the American discovered that his prisoner spoke English. You know what, said the Japanese soldier. I was once a Christian. The American deliberated the moment and then said, why did you give up Christianity? A look of surprise came on the Japanese soldier, and he answered with a puzzled expression, how can I be a soldier and still be a Christian? Right? Interesting question. Interesting question. You know, it's kind of funny because in American Christianity, we've even got that song, Onward Christian Soldiers, you know, and trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. You know, all these war hymns that we celebrate within Christianity. It really shows how we've been deluded, right? We've forgotten. Love one another with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? We forget those messages, right? And we choose the ego satisfying teachings, right? And get led astray. What people do not realize is that nonviolence can be applied in all situations, including World War II. I met 4 of the Danish people who used the way of nonviolence and love in World War II, and it was a wonderful story. Now, when the Germans occupied France, The French would often kill the German soldier who was patrolling, and then the Germans would wipe out that whole block in retaliation. When the Germans marched into Denmark, the Danish people began a program of non cooperation. You know, they say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Many Danish people actually used that way. They would say to the German soldier who was patrolling, as a representative of the Nazi government, you have no right to be here any more than we would have the right to be in your land. But you are also a young man far from home. Maybe you're homesick. And if you, as a fellow human being, would like to take off your gun belt, come in and share our evening meal with us, you are welcome. It usually didn't take more than one try. After that, the German soldier would get to thinking, gee, these are nice people. What are we doing here? The Danes also used nonviolent ways to protect the Jewish people in Denmark. You know, this is a beautiful, oops, I think, let's see. This is the opposite of how we are normally tempted to act. You know, I've been watching myself a lot through this whole experience because really it's the first time in my life I've been in the conditions or the circumstances that we're sharing these days. And it's been a very interesting exercise. I'm learning a whole lot about my mind, a lot of it disappointing. Because, you know, I read about these ice guys, you know, I watch these videos about these ice guys just breaking, you know, our constitutional rights and forget the legal language, not treating each other like human beings, right? And it's funny because my impetus isn't then to start to treat him like a human being. My impetus is to bang him over the head, right? to get my anger out of the way, to stop the situation that's in front of me. And so I'm meeting evil with evil, right? That means I'm in ego space, right? I'm dwelling in that space of body mind, right? Because the solution to the problem is to love that ice guy, to catch him off guard, to go up and be genuinely nice to him, genuinely considerate of him, genuinely respectful toward him, right? That will bring him into his human space and take him out of that defensive ego space, right? Where he has to justify what he's doing. And in the moment, he's going to use might to make himself right. And so that's going to lead to disaster. So we have to be the impetus of love because people who don't know better are going to follow the impetus of ego, the impetus of violence, you know. I think what we saw happen in Minnesota was beautiful, the way that community came together, right? And disciplined themselves not to go the violent way, you know, to sing those peaceful hymns, peaceful, heartfelt hymns, you know, hymns that had heart in them. It's like that was the right way. Somebody was beautiful there. Whoever was the inspiring energy behind that, you know, that's a person I'd like to learn from. It's like this is the way. We should see these horrendous things on the news and they should inspire horrendous ideas of peace within us, horrendously large ideas of service, of love. I'm going to write positive letters. I'm not going to write complaining letters. I'm going to stay in heart space. I'm still building my better world. I don't care what the rest of everyone else is doing. My agenda is a world that manifests its divinity purely and freely in the moment. My life is not worrying about the mess that politics is getting involved in or that, you know, goofballs on the other side of the world are getting into, right? My heart is my responsibility to protect it, to keep it focused on love, to keep it focused on forgiveness, to keep it focused on mercy, right? By staying in the presence of the beloved, which is all of those things, is the only power to maintaining those things. Our battle in this day has nothing to do with presidents and politics and weapons and countries. It has to do with our own heart, with our own being, with the world that we live in right here and right now, to activate our service, to activate within ourselves the grace that God is showing us by giving us a fresh moment continually to start again and to do better. I met a Jewish woman who had been married and living with her parents in Germany under Hitler at the time of World War II. She was married when she was 16. Her first child was born when she was 17, and the second when she was 18. She was 19 when three things happened to her. The first, her home was destroyed and her parents killed by an English bomb. I guess they thought they were liberating her. The second thing that happened, her husband was taken away by the Nazis, and she assumed he was dead because she never heard from him again. The third thing that happened, she was injured and her two small children were killed by an American bomb. When I saw her, she still carried the effects of injury. Again, we were liberating her. Quote, in her injured condition, she wandered around and around with refugees. Sometimes extenuating circumstances make you take a spiritual leap. She began thinking, they have injured and even destroyed our bodies, but they have injured their own souls, and that is worse. She was able to feel compassion, to pray for all connected with the situation, and the killer and the killed. She was able to maintain such a good attitude that she was befriended by German people who, at the risk of their lives, got her to England, where she was befriended by the English people and eventually got to the United States. Now, obviously, this represents the most amazing victory of the spirit under the most difficult circumstances you could possibly imagine. It also illustrates something else. Who or what was that woman's enemy? Was it the English who destroyed her home and killed her parents? Was it the Germans who killed her husband? Was it the Americans who injured her and killed her two small children? The answer is amazingly obvious. It was war that was her real enemy. It was the false belief that violence will accomplish something, that evil can overcome more evil. That was her real enemy, and it's the real enemy of all mankind. Right? And this is that impetus that I was talking about that we have to overcome. In our moments, our ego is constantly wanting to return violence for violence, pain for pain, punishment, over rehabilitation. These kinds of things, this egoism, this pride gets in, this Hegseth who's leading the military. Listen to the arrogance of his words, completely controlled by his ego. No self-development in there whatsoever. And I don't say that as a judgment of him as a person. I'm not even talking about him just as an example of speech in a position of power, right? In a position where he has all that ability to show mercy and to show kindness and to show inspiration. He is drunk on violence, drunk on hatred, right? And this is our temptation. We look at him, we don't judge him. We look at him and we become very, very watchful of our own heart, of our own mind, because also our egos are being tempted to respond to violence with violence, to hatred with hatred, to judgment with judgment, right? And so I just say, guys, let's pull ourselves into the heart. Let's really do this. We have the power, even just the handful of us here. That's all Mother needs. She's the worker. She's the one that gets things done. If just 2 or 3 or 4 of us today really make this move, really center ourselves in our heart and really commit ourselves to this moment being perfect, we can change the narrative of the world. As a matter of fact, the narrative of our world will have already changed if we take this on. So we need to be in this time of what we've been interpreting as nightmares. We now need to interpret it as dreams. And we need to dream a different dream, right? A dream of self-empowerment, a dream of love, a dream of a better world, right? And we're going to make it happen right under the works and noses of the people who have destroyed it. Just by caring, just by being where we are, and just by remembering who we are, right? Touching our own inner peace and sharing it with love with the person next to us. Just as a human soul that faces great difficulties also faces great opportunities for spiritual growth, so a human society that faces destruction also faces the opportunity to enter a period of renaissance. This is what we're talking about. This is not a period of destruction. This is a period of renaissance, right? Where the old ways have come to a head and now have to be destroyed, have to be dealt with, right? For what? So that we can move farther in our ideal, so that we can move closer in our ideal. We can see that the egoism that's driving the moment is not the answer, and take the moment to move into our hearts, move into our humanity. I think that, barring an accident, the wish to survive will keep us from a nuclear war, and I think both sides will change. We will move toward more economic and social democracy, and they will move more toward political and individual democracy. The ideal society has yet to be built, one which balances nicely collective well-being and individual well-being. Right? Stories about non-violence. One day I was musing beside an old fort. I wondered what it would say to the people of the world if it could speak, and I wrote this article. An Old Fort Speaks. This is the article. When I was built, much time and money was spent on me, because it was thought that I would defend the city against all invaders. Now I stand forlorn, since it does not require great wisdom to recognize that I am obsolete. I am not the only material defense which is obsolete. Even the most modern of them are obsolete now, although in your fear and your bewilderment you still cling to them. But while in your immaturity you lavish your time and your treasure upon them, you know in your hearts that they cannot defend you against anything. Right? She's talking about our military budget right now. Do you not understand that war is obsolete? It has already demonstrated it cannot end or fix the problems, because there are more wars and constant wars. They are not the answer. So all of our weapons are already obsolete to solve our problems, right? Politics already obsolete to solve our problems. We need our humanity now. We need our humanity, that divine spirit within, that Satchitananda. We need the awareness of that in this moment to set things right, to grow into this new world that Mother is working on. Even the most modern of our weapons are obsolete now, although in your fear and your bewilderment you cling to them. But while in your immaturity you lavish your time and your treasure upon them, you know in your hearts that they cannot defend you against anything. You know that you stand seemingly defenseless, facing a new age, while the nuclear bomb says to you, make peace or perish. But you are really defenseless because all material defenses have crumbled as they were bound to crumble. Have you forgotten the defense which cannot crumble? The defense which lies in obedience to higher law. Down through the ages, your best teachings, your best selves have been telling you that evil can only be overcome by good. And experience has shown that if you want to make friends, you must be friendly. When will you have wisdom enough to forsake the path to annihilation and to turn to the defense which is timeless and ageless and changeless? People of the earth, the decision is before you. You can still choose life, but you must choose quickly. Indeed, I think we'll stop there for today. And turn off the recorder here.